Amen.
So we've been talking this year, continue to talk this year about being on mission with Jesus.
And then we're breaking it down into different steps and different focal points of what that means to be on mission with Jesus. We talked about how we each get a call, and a lot of times in the scriptures as well as to us today, the call is, will you come and follow? And we say, what am I stepping into? But the call is to, will you walk with Jesus? And we find out the specifics of it as we go along. And so then in February we talked about what is the calls, what is the mission, what is Jesus entering into, and how do we get to participate with that. And now this month, as we start the process of going to the cross, as we enter into Lent, this period where we open up our lives to experience the fact that this wasn't all just a lot of fun and games for Jesus, that there was a cost, and the cost of his very life. And so we talk about the cost of Jesus on the way to the cross, or the cost of the cross, as we enter into these next few weeks. So today, we want to look into a passage of Scripture that's in Matthew 20, and it's in 3 different sections. So rather than just pointing out that to you afterward, let me highlight those 3 sections. We could have the first slide here. First of all, there's a problem that develops, just like any good story, right? You don't have much of a story if you don't have a problem that develops. So there's a problem that develops for Jesus, and then Jesus, in the second part, gives his solution statement. This is how it should be, kids, children, disciples, and then at the end there's an example of how it gets carried out in the most unlikely of ways. You track with me? Okay, let's read it, and then we'll take it apart in those 3 ways. Matthew 20, beginning at verse 17. As Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside privately and told them what was going to happen to him. Listen, he said, we're going up to Jerusalem where the Son of Man will be betrayed to the leading priests and the teachers of religious law. They will sentence him to die. Then they'll hand him over to the Romans to be mocked, flogged with a whip, and crucified. But on the 3rd day, he will be raised from the dead. Pretty clear what Jesus is after, right? Then this opportunistic, you all thought that helicopter parenting was a product of the 21st century? Not so much. The mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, these are 2 of Jesus' disciples, she came to Jesus with her sons. She kneels respectfully, but she's asking for a favor. What's your request? Jesus asked. She replied, in your kingdom, let my 2 sons sit in the places of honor next to you, one on your right and the other on your left. Jesus answered by saying to them, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering that I'm about to drink? First of all, let's just stop. Why is he saying you don't know what you're asking? It seems like maybe this mom wasn't paying attention to what Jesus had just said, right? It's like, I got my agenda going on this morning, and so I'm just going to come in and get my point across. And whatever's happening here is kind of incidental. I'm going to stick Jesus in my back pocket, use him for what I want. And Jesus saying, I'm on mission. Would you join in on my mission rather than asking me to be part of yours? So Jesus answered by saying, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering that I'm about to drink? Oh, yes, they replied, we are able. You don't want to know what it is? Oh no, we're in, right? That's how it goes, right? I think I'm going to get a reward, therefore whatever, because I'm just like, Jesus told them, you will indeed drink from my bitter cup, but I've no right to say who will sit on my right or my left. Do you feel like he tricked them just a little bit? It's Jesus, so we don't like to say that, but I always look at that, I'm sort of like, it felt like it was kind of a leading question. Are you ready to pay the price? But whether you get the reward or not, it's like, That's not up to me. That's kind of what we've been saying, right? Are you going to be walking with him? It's not the first time he's talked like this. It's not that he pulls the wool over their eyes or tries to fool them. He says, so you will drink from a bitter cup, but I have no right to say who'll sit on my left or my right. My Father has prepared those places for the ones he's chosen. Okay? That's the problem. That these disciples that are following Jesus, there's these ulterior motives in it for themselves, trying to sort this out, what this means, trying to connect what their expectations have been with what the agenda of Jesus really is that he's presenting to them. So lots of stuff going on there. Here comes Jesus' statement. We move to scene 2. When the 10 other disciples heard what James and John had asked, they were indignant. They didn't just say, well, that was a dumb thing to do. They're all kind of indignant, like, oh man, wish we'd have thought of that first. Start to jockey for position, What's it saying? It's like, this is in all of our hearts, right? It doesn't do much of a good job to just be pointing fingers and saying, oh, they've got mixed agendas here in this mission with Jesus. But Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers in this world lord it over people. Officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. Whoa. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. That's Jesus' solution. Now let's get the example. As Jesus and the disciples left the town of Jericho, a large crowd followed behind them. 2 blind men were sitting beside the road. When they heard that Jesus was coming that way, they began shouting, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. Be quiet, the crowd yelled. But they only shouted louder, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. When Jesus heard them, he stopped and called, What do you want me to do for you? Lord, they said, we want to see. Jesus felt sorry for them, or Jesus had compassion on them, touched their eyes. Instantly, they could see. Followed him. So there's this problem of these mixed motives in following Jesus. This opportunistic mother who is trying to work her own agenda into what Jesus is doing and what he's about. Jesus has just explained that he'd be handed over to the Roman authorities, that he'd be killed, and then sort of here from cross purposes comes this question that's like, and what's in this for me? And Jesus is saying, you're missing what this means to be on mission with me. There's a cost to this, and the cost is about trusting my path and letting go of your agendas in order to walk in my way. Not to be too hard on Mrs. Zebedee here. She's not trying to overthrow Jesus' agenda. She's quite in line with Jesus becoming the ruler and triumph over all. She wants to know, is she going to get her peace? Is she going to be part of the reward of all of that? Sometimes, in much less public ways, we do the same thing. It's like, I've been praying for this, and praying for this, and praying for this. Why aren't you answering my prayer? Why aren't you giving me what I'm asking for? Now, there can be different answers for that. Sometimes it's simply wait. Sometimes it's the person you're praying for has a hard heart too and gets their own choices. And so you keep praying, my child. So This isn't the answer for everybody, but at times this is the answer. Where Jesus is saying, would you stop talking? Would you listen to my heart? Would you begin praying my will into this situation instead of praying your preferences? Instead of praying to secure your place in this, pray that my will be done. And of course, we keep moving through into this Passion Week. We see Jesus doing that, where there's this most unenjoyable prospect before Jesus as he's in the garden, right? And he's saying, Lord, is there any other way? But my will, keep that committed to you. Please have it happen in accordance with your will. The 10 disciples hear that Jesus is asking for this, or that James and John were asking for this preferred place, and they're missing it too. They're missing that Jesus is saying, there's this call that I have, and I'm asking that you put your trust into me. I'm not just asking that you follow with this intellectual understanding, but I'm asking that your future, your circumstances, your emotions, all that you have, that you're placing them into this place that says, Jesus, you will be the one that will carry me through. I'm not going to be basing this on circumstances from here on out. So then Jesus talks. He says, out there in the world, people jockey for position, for power, but here, where my kingdom is already taking root, it will be different. Here's how it will be. Let's go to the second slide. Here's how it will be in my kingdom. In my kingdom, it will be different. There's different ways that it happens when I'm in charge. Instead of looking to be served and who's going to be honoring you, you're saying, where's the place that I can be serving? Where's the place that I can be contributing in? Out there, it's assumed that you've got to have it all together. That you've got to just keep faking it till you make it. In here, you're allowed to be real. You're allowed to be authentic. You're allowed to say, I'm broken. I'm in need of care. I need to have Jesus come and minister to me. Out there, it's either I'm doing it all or I'm dropping it all. And I'm pulling back. And here, Jesus is saying, in my kingdom, there's time when we're serving and when we're giving, and then we come together as a body, and here comes the hard part sometimes, where it's okay, where Jesus welcomes us to be the one that says, I'm in need of your grace this morning. Brothers and sisters, will you minister to me? And so it's quite common to say, well, how are you doing? And we all just say, oh, I'm okay. But then you go away and wonder, why do I feel alone? Why do I feel isolated? Why do I feel discouraged? Why didn't that connect? And it's like you missed the point of grace. You missed the point where Jesus is saying, as we get to the third part, what can I do for you? How would you like to be ministered to this morning? Where you let down that guard, let down that somehow thinks that because we accepted Jesus into our life, that therefore somehow we have to pretend that it's all going to be perfect from there on. That's not the way to the cross. That's not the way that Jesus offers. But Jesus says, come together. Come to me. Come, respond. So Jesus goes on then with what he's talking about. He says, the reason I came is to give my life as a ransom for many. Verse 28, even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Let's talk about this word ransom. You hear about ransoms if somebody's kidnapped, right? Kidnapped and they demand a ransom. I need $1 million in order for this person to be made free. Recently in the news, there was these short-term mission workers that were kidnapped in Haiti, right? And they demanded, and the captors demanded a ransom for them to be set free. It's probably more common in our culture now, where it's like where websites get hacked, right? And there's a ransom that's demanded in order to let that website have that data be open and that information to be used instead. But let's just hang with me here a little bit, because those are all illegitimate, extortionary uses of that term, right? So, how does this ransom work? Because you didn't just get kidnapped into captivity. You joined in. You willingly entered in. What's the phrase where you identify with your captor? The Stockholm syndrome. There's a Stockholm syndrome and a Stockdale syndrome. I get them mixed. So the Stockholm syndrome, where you think that that's the way out, the one who has you captive, where you say this life of sinfulness, of self-centeredness, of trying to make it all work for me and my way, that's going to be my future. That's where my success is. And so maybe sometimes the Bible uses the word ransom. Sometimes it just uses the word debt. That I've dug myself into a hole, right? I owe more than what I can ever repay. I need a solution. I need a savior. I need someone who can pay this debt, who can bring me out of this place. So, who is it that, let's have the next slide. Who is it that pays the ransom? Who does the ransom get paid to? And what is it? It'd be fun to hear all your responses on that, because this at times is a great debate, where, especially the second one, of who is the ransom paid to. Is the ransom paid just generally to sin, to death? Is a ransom paid to Satan? But who are we in debt to? We're in debt to God, our Creator, right? He's the one that sets it up. He's the one that establishes. And so the good news of the gospel is that He sets up this world, He creates this world, and He says, here's how you live in relationship with me, and He places us on that way, and then we choose not to live that way. We choose to develop this syndrome of thinking this avenue into sin is our way of the future. And then God steps down off His throne, off this place where He rules the world, and steps down and He says, here's my son. This is the ransom. Jesus says, I give my life as a ransom for many. Isn't that amazing? Did you catch what's happening? God says, this is the debt, this is the gulf that stands between me and you. And here, I'm going to now pay the price. I'm going to be the solution. In order for you to be set free, in order for that ransom to be paid, in order for you to live with me forever. Why doesn't God just say, oh, never mind, forget about it? It's because the separation has happened, right? This isn't like a fairy tale. This is occurring in real time. It's being worked out. And so there has to be this the solution that happens in order for this reconciliation to occur again. Third part. There's two blind men. They're sitting by the road. They hear that Jesus is coming. As Jesus is coming, they begin to shout, "Son of David, have mercy." Now, Jesus has been saying, everybody needs a ransom. You all get it. I came for everybody. What does the crowd hear? Only certain people are worthy of this. Certainly you two beggars sitting by the side of the road, you're not part of what Jesus meant. There's this crowd of in-together people. We're going to Jerusalem. In fact, there's already debates and things going on about who's going to be his prime minister and secretary of defense and all those other things about who sits on the right or the left. And certainly you two beggars are not part of what this journey is about. You got us something to offer to bring into this. That's just the way we think. And Jesus is saying, not here, not in the kingdom of God. Jesus comes to them and he asks them a question. What do you want me to do for you? How would you answer that question this morning? Where do you see yourself in this story? See yourself as the disciples, James and John? The 10 others that are indignant? Mrs. Zebedee, who's jockeying for position? What if we're the beggars this morning? And Jesus stands before us and says, how can I minister to you this morning? What's the need that you have? Because I came to give myself for you. You get to receive as you open your heart to me. See, what's the difference? Mrs. Zebedee had a request that she asked Jesus. Here these two beggars have this request that they asked Jesus. Mrs. Zebedee's request was a request for position, for promotion. The beggar's quest was for healing. Jesus is saying this morning, where do you need healing? Where do you need wholeness brought into your life? Where do you need to be touched and made whole and brought back into fellowship and relationship with me? For that ransom to be paid, for that gap to be restored, so that you know that you are reconciled and living in relationship with the Creator, that you're living in that way that He made for you to walk with Him on for all time, for all eternity. We're going to come into worship, and then we're going to have communion this morning. And so in communion, that becomes the question. As we take on of this bread, of this cup, as we remember thankfully what Jesus does for us, that we're doing it because of His grace, that we're doing it because He comes and He says, how can you be healed today?